Thanks KiwiCo for sponsoring today's video. More on them in a bit.
As many of you know, our family is currently working on building a farmhouse on acreage that we purchased last spring. I shared this with you all last November. We are currently working on that project. So the basement is fully in. We had to wait in a break in the weather for it to be warm enough for us to actually pour that concrete. We are also doing a barn, so this is something that we're really excited about. As this homestead takes shape, there will be so many things that we'll want to do. We have a potential plan for another building, but that might be years down the road. Of course, we want to add garden beds, and hopefully that will be sooner. There's just a lot of ideas and possibilities. There's fencing that needs to be done. So this is something that's going to take shape over many, many years. But in the very near future, we will actually be building the main dwelling place, our farmhouse, that our family of 10 will move into, hopefully later this year. So I've been excited to share with you the design that I have pored over and obsessed over the last year. Last summer, I think, was when I really gave this all of my thought, which is really interesting the way this whole process works. I'm kind of just learning as I go with the whole thing. But long before the house comes out of the ground, so to speak, there is thought and consideration, and there's dreams, and then at some point decisions have been made and you actually move forward on the project. So this in my head is fully built. Like, I have the whole place laid out and how it's going to look probably 5 years from now, and especially how the house is going to look by the end of this year. Last summer, I was already obsessing over this, and it's funny because at this point, I feel like I haven't really given it a ton of thought in the last couple months, like the floor plan and the basic design. Those decisions have been set, and now I'm moving on to where are we going to get our cabinetry from? What range am I going to select? Trim, floor color, all of that is what I'm actually planning right now. But the basic design and layout and floor plan, that all came together mostly last summer. So I'm excited to share with you how it came about and then what we are doing for our floor plan. So what this farmhouse is actually going to look like, how it's going to function, and how we're going to make it look old. So I shared in the video where I was sharing that we were moving from our last farmhouse, that we purchased a larger farm with a creek that we think will really serve our large family well over the coming years, a lot better for various reasons than our last property did. That we wanted to make a house that would look old. I kind of shared the evolution of that, like how we wrestled with the decision and eventually came to terms with this is what we were going to do. And I shared this book, New Old House, because I ordered this book when we first started thinking about this well over a year ago. I wanted to be convinced that I could have a house with character, even if it was a new build. And through various people that I follow online, various YouTube channels, various books I've read, I am convinced that's possible in one way or the other. And it's just a matter of how far you want to take it to make the story of the home believable. One of my friends actually referred me to Jay Osborne, and he makes these farmhouse plans. There is a website called freefarmhouse.com where Jay Osborne offers these farmhouse plans that are based on farmhouses that he's seen across the country. And so this one is called American Farmhouse. They're free architectural plans that I was really drawn to because it looked like a genuine old farmhouse, even though it's brand new. And if you follow him over on Instagram, you can search Jay Osborne or Free Farmhouse. You can see people that have actually built this American farmhouse. Adorable. But what I found happening when I was actually trying to design off of this plan was there were several things I was like moving around. Like, okay, well, on our property, when you look this certain way, this is the pretty view. So I want my kitchen on this side. We're gonna have to swap that. And then I need the house a little bit bigger so we can put this addition off the back. Especially for our large family, this American farmhouse is a much smaller house. If that's great for your family, this might be the perfect resource that you need because it's also made to be added onto. So you can start with the basic farmhouse and then you can add an addition off the back. I've seen people on Instagram add an addition off the side, add a garage off the back. So if this suits your family and your property, beautiful work. And I also love that in it he includes suggestions for materials. He also offers this southern farmhouse option. And this is the one that I started actually obsessing over and drawing the plans over. So I pored over this book. And again, I started adding things like we need this still. And I feel like this kitchen's on this side, but yet on our property, it'd be better if it was on this side. And again, I came up with a plan that I thought would be really nice, which I scribbled out on the sheet. Lovely, lovely rendition, where I basically have the house divided with a central hall. So that's kind of an old house feature. And then adding a dining room on one side because it didn't have enough space for just a big enough kitchen dining, at least for what I wanted. Like I said, this would be plenty for a lot of families. And then I got the idea of what if we did a one-story addition off the back that mirrored the front porch, but it housed a lot of the guest bathroom, the laundry room, the mud room, the pantry. Actually, I think at that time I didn't have a pantry. I had a mud room there with a pantry built into the kitchen. Anyways, that's where my brainstorming was going. The Southern farmhouse with my scribbles was where we were last, I would say, spring. And then Luke did some searching on YouTube and he started searching for new houses that look old. And he came across someone named Brent Hall. Many of you, when I shared my original video saying that we wanted to build a new old house, recommended Brent Hall because maybe you've looked for new old house stuff on YouTube or Instagram, or you've come across some of his content on the Build Network. Also, I saw he was on my friend Jill Winger's Old Fashioned On Purpose podcast talking about building quality classic homes. She called the podcast Creating a Timeless Home in an Instant Age. And I think I even listened to that episode, but I kind of forgot. But then Luke came across a show on YouTube called New House, Old Soul. And I got hooked on Brent's content. Everything from his design videos. So he takes clients' homes and then he redesigns them for a few little tweaks that a lot of times they're not proportioned correctly. And he actually studied historic preservation. And so he studies symmetry and design so that things are beautiful and timeless. And we've lost that art in modern building. I pored over his content. I watched multiple videos. I started listening to his podcast. And I became convinced that I wanted to see if Brent could actually help me with this design, because though I had like pretty good chicken scratch stuff out here, I changed a lot of things about this Southern farmhouse plan to fit our needs, and I was worried that I was going to mess up proportions. So you can use something like this as a starting point, this New Old House book. It kind of talks about designing within certain parameters. So basically, like it says, invent within the rules, create new designs within the rules of a style, invent within the traditional language of architecture. So taking what has already been done and then kind of building within that. And then it also talks about telling a story, scripting a story about growth over time, imagining changes made by alterations and additions. And that is what Brent talked about on his content. He talked about crafting a narrative and a story with his home. So basically, maybe putting one thing that we're going to do, and I'll share about this shortly, is there's going to be an exterior chimney, but then we're going to put an addition off of that. That's going to be a sunroom, but the chimney will be inside of that. So it will look as if that was an addition that happened later, which is really what gives houses a story when you feel like it didn't all happen at one time. It was kind of built on, which is how an old farmstead would be. Trying to craft that story in a new build is something that is a principle in this book, and then also something that Brent talks about a ton. And so I sent him this chicken scratch plan and said, I want something like this, but I really don't want to mess up the proportions. I want it to have old house character, and I feel like you could really help me with this. So I reached out to him on Instagram, and he was excited to help with the project. So he actually was in my same state for visiting a relative. He was able to actually come to the farm and stand in the location where the home would be. He was able to really get a scope for where the driveway would come in and how the whole property would lay out and why the kitchen should be on this side of the house and the front porch view that we will get. So Brent Hall and I have been working in collaboration to design this house over the last almost a year at this point, and it's finally going to come together. So let me share with you a bit about the actual house plans and why we made some of the choices that we did. Living in town these past several months, especially in the wintertime, while working on our farmhouse build, has been a little tough, especially with 8 kids running around. I love that KiwiCo gives them something to work on that's fun and exciting, but also teaches them something STEAM related: science, technology, engineering, art, math. My kids get so excited when they see that KiwiCo has arrived and they cannot wait to get into them. KiwiCo makes learning fun through hands-on projects for kids of all ages. With KiwiCo, kids will build new skills with each new hands-on project they work on. Watch your kids go from learning to build bows and arrows to engineering their own robot. While KiwiCo is anchored in educational topics like science and engineering, each project goes through rigorous kid testing to make sure it scores an A+ in genuine fun, and they are built to last. I love that with KiwiCo, everything you need comes in the box. You don't have to run around the house sourcing different items. They can spend time completing them on their own. So it gives the older kids something fun and challenging to do, and then for the little ones, it gives something that you can work on with them side by side. They will meet them at their development level and help them learn in a hands-on way. My older kids love KiwiCo Labs. This time they were able to make a laser speaker, which somehow hooked up to the music they were playing and made lights come out. Pretty darn cool. The middle boys loved doing the color discovery and transforming tops. We also had a wooded clock. This can keep them busy for hours, and on a rainy day like today, I couldn't ask for a better solution. If you want to give your kids the magic of KiwiCo and support my channel, head to the link kiwico.com/farmhouseyt and use the code Farmhouse to get 50% off your first month. I will leave it linked down in the description box below. So the idea that I told Brent was, I want this to look like a simple Missouri farmhouse that has been sitting on this farm for the last 100 years. I really went back and forth on what exactly that would look like, because a lot of the houses around here, when I drive down the back roads, I mean, I see these kind of houses all the time. They're designed more like a T. So there's like a smaller house up front with sort of a T addition off the back. And I see this over and over again. And it is primarily the types of farmhouses that I see around here. Like I said, it's kind of what Jay Osborne shows here in this American Farmhouse book, which was inspired by a farmhouse he saw in Virginia. But because of the way our property lays out, and I think that you'll see when I start showing you a lot of the progress shots, the view is really to the front of the house, whereas it's tree lined from the back. So we have a large, several acres of woods behind the house and a lot of the open space, which we're on the top of a hill. So we can see a really lovely view is from the front porch area and then the sunroom that we're doing. The view on the other side of the house isn't as great. The view from the back isn't as great. And so I really felt like, even though I feel like most of the farmhouses we see in Missouri do have that T shape, I want to capitalize as much on this broad view from the front as possible and the view to the west as we can. And so that is why we ended up doing the central hall idea, just because the layout worked out so much better for our family and for the property that it is on. So basically the main level of the house is divided in, let's just say, 4 quadrants. There's a central hall down the middle. Now it was going to be that you would go all the way through that hall to the back door, but because of the clearance of the stairs, it's actually going to be more of like a foyer area, and then there will also be sort of that same thing across the back. We just won't walk underneath the stairs, which for decorating purposes, I really like having more rooms. I like certain things to be sort of open concept, but also to have the option to close things off and, to not have everything all be the same room. It will have sort of an entryway with stairs going up to the second floor, and then to the right will be a living room. Now we are sourcing doors from old farmhouses. There was actually a farmhouse on a property that my dad owns that was very much beyond repair at the time when they bought the property, and so they were taking that down. So Luke salvaged out of that house several old doors that will go into our house. I am still on the lookout for pocket doors because we're going to put pocket doors in that living room area. And then to the left is the dining space and then the kitchen. So basically the bottom, if you divide it into 4 quadrants, you have kitchen, dining, and then you have me and Luke's bedroom, and you have the living room. We were gonna make all 4 of those equal because that is originally what I saw sort of historic precedent for, but we felt that we needed more space for our large family in the living room than the bedroom for me and Luke. So none of these rooms are going to be massive. The living room in this new house is going to be smaller than the living room in our old house, and it was so funny because while we were designing this, we were still living in our old house, and I had the tape measure out constantly. People in my family started joking, like everywhere I went, I was measuring things. I was measuring porches, I was measuring width of houses, I was measuring how big people's living rooms were, getting a gauge for like kitchen sizes. And so I obsessed over this, but this living room is going to be a lot smaller than the living room in our last house, but there were some spaces in our last house that felt a little vast and very difficult to decorate. A lot of things had been opened up. So like our living room had a really massive opening. Now this wasn't originally that way, but it made it difficult to decorate because I didn't really know where to put furniture, because there was also quite a few windows on all walls and then a really large opening. And so there weren't enough places to put couches, whereas this, although smaller, cozier, I think will have enough seating when it's all said and done. And so much of this is just very theoretical until it's all up and I'm like, okay, I can see this now. But I did do a ton of measuring, a ton of taping out just to see, okay, yes, this is different than what we currently have, but I think it'll work better in some ways. And of course, with every house build, something I've noticed with this whole process is that you cannot have it all. I was telling somebody this the other day. We wanted a sunroom on this side of the house, but I also wanted to have a massive window to look out from my kitchen sink out to like where the kids would be playing. And although I still have the window and I have the sunroom, of course having the sunroom cuts into that window. There was compromises like this just all over the house because it's just not possible. A lot of things overlap. You can't have everything. And so we made the best decisions that we could. And I know there'll be things that I'm like, oh man, I wish this was a little bit bigger, this was a little bit smaller. But the bedroom that we have on the other side of that living room, it'll be pretty small, but it can fit a king size bed. It's going to have a walk-in closet, which is going to be really nice, and a bathroom, which is great. We haven't had a bathroom in our bedroom for many years now, like a, you know, just like an ensuite bathroom. So we're excited to have that. One of the concepts that I was trying to create in my little chicken scratch drawing here that I gave Brent was creating what would look like a back porch to mirror the front porch, but that originally got closed in. That was going to be the story. And if you watch Brent's content, you're going to see he likes to craft a story with all of the designs that he does, because this is what helps to give them character. He actually made a video about our build because he was inspired by a home that he saw when he was on a vacation. He saw a porch that had been closed in at one point, and that's what we're trying to make it look like happened. So there was a front porch, there was a mirror image back porch, and then at one point the family decided that they were going to close in that back porch so that they could have additional square footage. That back porch area will house a pantry, a laundry room, a mud room, a guest bathroom, a bathroom for me and Luke, and a closet. One of the ways that we're going to make this more believable as a back porch that was closed in, the plan is to have flooring in there that looks like a wood porch floor that is painted. We also plan to put beadboard on the ceiling to have that exterior siding, and then of course all of the beautiful windows. Now I went and visited my friend Kristen Hoffman last fall in Nebraska, and she had a little closed-in porch room that had painted floors, and I made a mental note like, this is what makes it have so much character. I knew that it was an old porch, and at one point it was closed in to serve as a family's mudroom. That's the same look that we're trying to go for. So I'm gonna link Brent's video because I feel like you'll get such a better visual for how we're going to make this look like an enclosed porch. One thing we really wanted that we don't have at this house, we put in at the last house, and that we had at the previous house, our house on Boone Street, wood stoves. We love heating with wood. Now we really debated on, like originally, I pictured a central wood stove like we had in our last house, something that sits in the middle of the house, heats the whole house. But in the style with the central hall that we were going for, 2 exterior chimneys really made a lot more sense. And what this will do is put a wood stove in the kitchen and then over in the living room. Now, because the living room and our bedrooms are back to back, we can also tie into that same chimney another wood stove. One of the little things that I was sort of like a, oh, I imagine having a beautiful mantle in the center of the room in our living room. I realized, okay, well that would only be possible if the chimney was not central with the chimney on the other side of the house, the kitchen side of the house, because to make it centered on that living room room, they would have to move forward quite a bit. And so this would make for a corner wood stove, which when I first thought about it, I was thinking, I really don't want that. I want a wood stove or a fireplace in the middle of the room that you can have a mantle on. And I know I've looked up several pictures on Pinterest. You can still put a mantle both on a corner fireplace and also on a wood stove of any kind. You could also just put the wood stove like kind of in the corner, so very off-centered with the mantle around it. Still playing with that. But I do love wood stoves because they're cozy, you can gather around them, and definitely the idea of a corner wood stove in the living room has grown on me. It'll be cozy over there in the corner and we can kind of, you know, put the couches sort of centered around the room. I feel like some things are very straightforward with decorating. So like if there's a fireplace central on the room, it's the focal point. You know exactly where to put your couches and all of that. But I know that we will work with this, and that's just another one of those things where it was more important to me to have the chimneys central and to have the wood stove be in the corner. And then that gives us the opportunity to also have a wood stove in our bedroom, which we think is going to be really, really cozy. Now, originally, if you look back at the first rendition of this whole thing, because this house has a little bit more square footage than the southern farmhouse, we decided to make it 50 feet across instead of the 40 feet across that the southern farmhouse is. I didn't think that we were going to do the little addition on the side that I originally kind of tacked on my little scribble drawing of a dining space, an additional dining space to provide more space here in the southern farmhouse plan. But as we thought about it more and more, we really like having, especially with a lot of kids, with homeschooling, with being home all the time, having little areas where someone can go escape and read a book, maybe shut a French door or something, is really nice for us. Plus, we really hope to be the house that hosts. As our kids get older and they start moving out, our oldest is 16, so she's nowhere near moving out, but we know that, in 5 years, we're gonna start having kids move out. They'll eventually get married, they'll have kids. We're going to have a house full, and we want to host. I want to invite my sisters and all of their kids. I want to invite my kids and my kids' kids. And that is our vision for the property. And so to have another space where we could have another dining table, though not necessary, you can 100% host without that. You can all gather around, you can put tables outside. It is totally doable, and we've done it to host even when you don't have that situation. But this was just, we're starting from scratch. We're able to add things on at this point. And so we decided that we did want to go ahead and add that sunroom. One, because it's a beautiful view on that side of the house looking out those windows. It'd be another place where we could put in a large table. And then also being able to have that chimney enclosed and have the back side of that brick in that addition room. To me, I just thought that would add so much character. Also, because there'll be a wood stove tied in on the other side of that in the kitchen, that radiant heat will come out of the back of the bricks and we'll kind of reclaim that. And then another reason why we really wanted that space was to give us an exit out of the kitchen. So as the plans currently stand, there was a front door and a back door. Now that we have that little sunroom, we're going to put a door off the back of that. So that's a quick way to get out of the house from the kitchen side, and it'll create a little courtyard area. So I love when homes have cozy little walls. So, you have the back of the sunroom, you have the back of the house, the pantry part, and then in here you have a little area where you could put a little gravel patio, some tables, some string lights. We thought that would make for a really lovely area. Plus, most of our life is going to happen on that side of the house. The driveway will pull up on the other side of the house, and then on that west side, we will have everything for the kids to play. We'll have the barn, and we'll have a quick exit from there. And then in the warmer months, we'll have a table out there right off the kitchen that we can, head out there and make food. Eventually, I want somewhere to maybe put a barbecue pit, so something covered. I don't know. We'll have to cross that bridge when we get there. So many decisions being made. Now, another thing that this house will feature, and almost something that I thought, oh, this is too big, is a massive pantry. Now, it just worked out because with the way we have that back porch enclosure, the portion that sits off the kitchen, what lines up with the kitchen, it makes sense for it to be a pantry. And borrowing from that to give space to, say, like the mudroom, which I'd really like to be a little bit larger, wouldn't work with the central hall design. So therefore, huge pantry. Not super sad about it. One thing that we're going to do is put a large fridge and a large freezer, so probably about double the space that we currently have, basically like the size of our current fridge, just fridge, and then the size of our current fridge, also a freezer. Because it's such a large pantry, putting it in there just a few steps away from the range and the island, I think that's going to be a really beautiful but also extremely functional space. Now upstairs in the house is all function. We just have 4 bedrooms, 2 baths. They are not super huge rooms. Basically, that's going to be 1250 square feet because a lot of the square footage is happening in those additions downstairs. So since it's just mirroring the main portion of the house, there'll be 1250 square feet devoted to 4 beds and 2 baths. Not that that's tiny, but they're not massive rooms, which is actually something I'm looking forward to. In our last farmhouse, the way it was organized, there was very massive bedrooms to the point where you could have fit, 5, 6 beds. And I didn't really know how to decorate them because I couldn't, arrange 5 or 6 beds. It was great. Lots of space. Fabulous. This is going to be more rooms, but smaller rooms, which was kind of what I was hoping for when designing from scratch. With a lot of kids, having separation isn't necessary, but it is really nice. So like in our current house that we're living in while we're building, we have all of our boys kind of in one spot. It's doable, but I really would like to put these 2 boys would do great, together in this room, and these 2 would do better here. And I'm definitely looking forward to having like 4 distinct bedrooms with doors. And then one thing that we wanted to do from the very beginning, because you can do it eventually, you could kind of design the house that it can support eventually finishing an attic. We decided we're gonna do that from the very beginning. Now it's not going to have a bathroom. It's not going to be all this separation. Basically, you're gonna walk upstairs to the attic, and then there's going to be a room to the right and a room to the left. And again, just having rooms to be able to do whatever we decide to as functions change throughout the years. Like right now, we need a sewing room for our girls. In this house, it's kind of just everywhere in the main level because there's nowhere else to stash it. And so it can be a mess, and just having a place where they can create without, me being like, okay, you need to clean up because it's in the main room of our house will be really nice. I also thought about putting like a podcast studio up in the west room of the attic because then I can look out and see kids playing while recording a podcast episode. So it will likely for now be a sewing room and an office. So we'll see. But we are excited to have just additional space. Now this house will have a basement. Both of our first 2 houses had basements, but I'm interested to see what it's like having a new house basement. I don't know, I think that you'll use it maybe in a little bit of a different way. Now it's not a walkout basement, but we are putting in steps from the exterior that you can enter into a door into the basement. So I think Luke wants to put his workout stuff down there. We will probably in the basement have maybe like a ping pong table or something like that. I don't know. It's going to be, I feel like, more usable space than our last houses. Like the last house I devoted to pantry because I didn't have a very big pantry. In this house, my pantry will be big enough that I don't believe I'll be making a pantry in the basement. And so it'll probably be just more like storage and recreational type of stuff. So we'll see how that shapes up. All right, well, we're super excited to build this new old farmhouse. And of course, it's a new house, we know, but we're trying our best to at least give it character. And honestly, I'm just so excited to get to the farm. I don't really care what kind of house at this point. I'm super excited to make this house beautiful. This is a passion of mine to design, and being able to devote my brain space to thinking through layouts and working with someone like Brent Hall to bring a vision to life is super exciting. But ultimately, we are just beyond excited to be out at the farm. We've been spending so much time out there walking through the woods before all the ticks come out. Coming soon, and poison ivy. The boys have found, I think, 5 or 6 deer antler sheds. We just really enjoy rural life. I will leave links for resources down below if you want to check out Brent Hall's content and just get inspired on how maybe you could add some character to the house that you live in right now that you can do. Or if you're thinking about a new build and you want to apply some of his wisdom, you can check it out there. And then anything else, any books I talked about, I'll leave down below. I'm sure you all will have plenty of questions, and maybe if you do, I will do another episode like this. And of course, I will share with you along the way any changes that we make or any issues we run into. I think that this whole thing is just going to be such a learning experience. It feels good at this point to have several decisions made. I'm no longer obsessing over the floor plan. That's done. Right or wrong, It's done. We made a lot of changes. We made it work, I believe, the best for our family. We've decided where it's going to go. Oh my goodness, what a decision. That was such a hard decision. We staked it out several spots. You angle it this way, you angle it that way. Which way should it be square? With the woods? With the front of the hill? I mean, we had other people come out, stand in it. What do you think? Is it for a while there in my head, I was afraid where we had it staked was kind of cocked the wrong way. That's made. The basement is in. That is decision checked off my brain. And I'm moving into some of the more fun decisions, like some of the design decisions. I mean, I'm far from like paint colors and all of that, but just some of those things that you have to order right now to get them ready for the build. We have the foundation poured for the barn, so that was a decision because how far should it be from the house? And our last property, the barn and the house were 160 feet apart, so there's a little bit of historic precedent, but there's plenty of old farmsteads where the barn and the house are 100 feet, 75 feet, 200 feet. So we kind of picked something. We picked 130 feet because when we were standing in the kitchen area of the house, we liked how far that seemed. And then how far back to set the barn to the woods. Basically what we landed on was putting a road that goes behind the house, and then there's enough space between the back of the barn and the woods to carry that road to it, but not much more space. So that way we still have the barn set back a little bit so it won't completely block the view from the house. To have even just those big decisions, the layout of the property made, means that we can move into some more fun ones, and we're really excited to bring you along.